I'm your host, Dino Watt, and get ready to be inspired as you learn exactly how to own your role. And welcome again to the Own Your Role podcast. My name is Dino Watt, and excited to have you here for another episode where we're talking to entrepreneurs who are doing unique things in the world. And this is one that not only works into the space of what I have been building for the last decade in my life in the orthodontic and dental space, but really just a great entrepreneur in general. And our guest today, Ty Ramsey, is going to share with us a little bit about his journey, also what he does in the space of orthodontics and dentistry, and it's pretty unique and different. And as always, we just want to say thank you to all those listeners out there, people who are talking about our podcast, people who are listening. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, thank you for watching us. Those of you that are listening on our platforms, all the platforms, thank you for downloading it. And whether you're on a treadmill or in your car, it really means a lot to us to know that we're continually giving you value that makes you want to tune in. So the same thing today with our guest, Ty Ramsey. Ty, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dino. Great to be on today. Excited to chat with you.
Well, Ty, we always start our show with the stories because I believe our stories are what connects all of us together. So can you tell us a little bit about your background? You're a Texas person. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that there's obviously some Longhorn happiness going on behind you.
And the accent as well.
And
I
the
have a bit
accent
of
and
a
all
unique
that fun
voice.
stuff. But, tell us a little bit about your story, where you come from, and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, great. Grew up in Texas. Went to University of Texas, as you can see from behind. Went through the dot-com bubble burst. So used to be in software before I got in dental. Been in dental right at 20 years now. But before that, one of the last dot-com jobs I have put me in the ground floor of the World Trade Center on 9/11 after the plane had hit. So I'm technically a World Trade Center survivor. I could spend an hour just talking about that. But after that, my mom always said, you survived that for a reason. You're here, go do something important. You're here. And before that, I had jobs, selling. I've been in sales most of my career and selling various things. But really, I felt like I found my calling just when I got in dental, because I don't, you really have to have a passion for what you do. And I love working with people that their job is to improve lives on a daily basis. So I feel blessed to be in that industry. Got into dental in 2004, 5-ish for a company called Ortho CAD, which has now become the ITERO scanner. That it morphed into that, but at the time it really dates me. Their main product was they did about 25,000 of these a month for $40 each. An orthodontist, for example, would pour up a stone model, mail it to them. They would digitize it and then send the digital file back for $40 a piece.
Wow.
That's how old I am in dental. So,
well, and just so people who are listening who aren't in the dental or ortho space, for those of you that have a frame of reference, an iTero scanner does digitally what the goop used to do back in the day when you would go to the dentist or orthodontist and they'd put that goop in your mouth and gag you. So the iTero scanner now is a digital way to scan the teeth to give the doctors a model of that. And it was pretty groundbreaking technology when it came out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure was. Yeah. And it ended up, they built the whole company around it. That we had another product before it, kind of a more rudimentary indirect bonding product. But I sold that as well. But then first chance, I got really intrigued with these really awesome 3D images I was seeing all of a sudden. And I was, what's this? Well, it's called the iCAD. And so my good friend Jeff Dirks, who was actually my sales manager at Ortho CAD, went to work over there, and I said, "Hey, buddy, get me over there as soon as you can." And he did, and ended up doing that for almost 14 years. Over 800 iCats later.
Wow.
Lots of lectures nationwide. Are we there?
Yep.
Dina? Okay.
Yep.
Can you still see me? Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
I accidentally, well, maybe we can edit that out. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Lots of lectures nationwide, and I really had the philosophy of the the relationship starts when you sign on the dotted line rather than the opposite of that. And I think a lot of salespeople fall into, not a lot, but some salespeople make the mistake of promising the world and then sign on the dotted line and you never hear from them again. I tried to be the exact opposite of that and really just considered myself a consultant the whole time. And the byproduct of my consulting might be that you invested with me in an ICAT, might not, but that's how I've really treated my whole career. And then I had the opportunity to go out on my own and do some cone beam consulting and some sales coaching. And I just kind of fell into the dental practice transition space just through the huge Rolodex that I had. And it's been a pretty great transition because a lot of these practices that trusted me a long time ago to install CBCT, I showed them how to market it, how to use it to grow their practice, and they did just that. And a lot of those are my clients today in the mergers and acquisitions, M&A transition space. And it's a lot, it's a lot like a 3D sale was way back when. People would say, well, why do I need to look at things in 3D? I have this 2D pan and set. And, that's how every conversation started out. And it's really, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So get the same objections today. And, there are preconceived notions about DSOs. For one, there are many different kinds of DSOs.
Right.
So a lot of preconceived notions. A lot of people never look into it. So I would say, you look into it before you shrug it off. So
Yeah, I was just talking to a client just this last week, and she asked me, I mean, she's an orthodontist, and she's like, so tell me, like, what does a DSO do and what's the pros and cons? And she just never really got into the conversation, even though it's a conversation that's happening with so many people. There's definitely a huge group of people who have just really not even engaged because they're so focused, excuse me, on building their business and doing what they do. I wanted to ask you a question.
mhm.
So, what you said, I think, is so crucial that the relationship and sales starts after they sign on the dotted line. So often we see this, and I think a lot of people have the bait and switch idea messed up a little bit. We've been trained that the bait and switch is, hey, come see this awesome car that's been advertised, and we go in, and that's not it. So they're going to switch you to something else, right? I actually think the bait and switch is what you just said. So many people sit with salespeople who are so good or charismatic and telling them all these amazing things we're going to do. And I'm talking salespeople, whether it is cars or houses or in ortho and dental, that these are the things we're going to do for you. And the moment that you become a client, now that pushing just pushes them off to somebody else who has no clue about the promises and the relationship that was built in that room or in that conversation. So tell me, why for you was this was it just like a personal thing that you just saw that needed to happen? Did you have a bad experience with something like that? Like, why is that so important to you?
I would just always put myself into the consumer's mindset and what I hated, what happened to me. I'll never forget a marketing professor when I was at University of Texas. He said, everyone in the world is in sales in some kind of way. So
Sure.
just look around you. Every single thing you're looking at, someone sold that.
Yep.
So that's how important sales is. And the great salespeople are the ones that are authentic and treat people the way they want to be treated. It's actually incredibly simple if you
Right.
ask me. But if you're just authentic, you act for the long-term success of your client versus just short-term success for you. You've got 50% of every sales force beat right there.
I
Unfortunately.
I agree. I see so much stuff on TikTok and Instagram of these sales gurus and the tactics, the pressure, the ways to overcome objections and stuff. And I'm like, man, I don't remember going to a really great, say, movie and then
Mhm.
going to my friend and having to sell them on going. I was just enthusiastic about what I saw. I shared that with them, and I knew that was something that they wanted in their life too, or maybe not. and they chose, yes, it was authentic, right? It was real. It wasn't, I didn't have to overcome an objection to the,
Exactly. And what if they said, well, I don't know if I want to see that movie or not because of this.
right.
And it said, well, what do I need to do to get you to see that movie? What if I give
Right,
you a ride
exactly.
there? What, how are you going to feel then? You're going to want to go even less.
Yes,
So
totally.
I've done a lot of closing by not closing in
That's
my.
right. I love that. I think that's so important. So when you talk about now with the PTS, the professional transition services strategies that you guys do, and the company that you work with there, when you're talking with doctors who are thinking about maybe even just entertaining the idea of maybe I want to retire in 5, 10 years, or maybe I just don't want to deal with a lot of the admin type stuff or whatever. What are some of the ways that you really help them see on a non-pressure, hey, you have to do way? What are some of the ways that you engage with them to educate them on what's possible for them?
Yeah, well, one of the first things I do, I say, okay, where are your numbers at approximately? We look at their numbers and, in general, the group, the doctors that are going to partner with the more preferable DSOs or the ones that we work with anyway, which is we work with in some form or fashion over 350 DSOs
Wow.
and over 1,500 private equity groups.
Wow.
And there, a lot of orthodontists assume, oh, there's only a few of these OSOs. Well, yeah, there are quite a few. There are actually almost 100 entities investing in orthodontics right now. So a lot of these orthodontists don't even know to even look. So that's what we do. But what I go over is I go, okay, well, first let's figure out if you're even a candidate to look into this. And normally the baseline for that is about 1.5 million in collections annually, with just a standard for ortho, pretty standard margin on the practice, about 20% or more.
Mhm.
And then we can begin to look into partnering them with a DSO. But, I talk about, what kind of culture do you have now? Do you want that to continue? And what's important to you? I like to ask them if you could wave a magic wand from now to retirement, what would it be? And surprisingly enough, I mean, sometimes it's, well, I want to max out my wealth accumulation. Sometimes it's, I want to work on my work-life balance. I want to keep my staff. I want to maintain culture. And all of those things can be achieved. There's a big misnomer that if you partner with a DSO that you're going to have these sky-high goals that you can't hit. They're going to come in and fire everybody. You're not going to make any money. It's, there's a whole lot of misnomers out there. So more than anything, I just like to educate them up front. And then we do a free practice analysis, a practice evaluation done by a dental CPA.
Wow.
That's one we've vetted the numbers, of course, we could, because we don't want to, someone that has a very small practice,
Sure.
there's how you, but someone whose numbers are there, we'll do a free practice evaluation, which is, it's about a 20-page document performed by a dental CPA
Mm.
that can be used. It's a legal document that can be used in a will or a trust. So
Wow.
I say, hey, Doc, at the very least, you're coming out of this with a very valuable piece of information for you and your family. And then we measure benchmarks that how would you like to know how your practice is viewed from an investor's perspective? So that's what we allow them to see is how investors view their practice. So a lot of that right there gets a lot of doctors interested that didn't know they were interested. Let's at least go down that path and look at that. Well, how much is it? Well, it's free of charge.
Well, let's talk about though some you said there's some misnomers about DSOs and things like that. Do you have like a say top two or top three that you come up against quite a bit, especially in today's market, right? I think, excuse me, I have a different market from, and in my opinion, anyway, from 3 years ago, 2 years ago to now, right? With interest rates and everything else. What are some of those misnomers that are happening?
Yeah, it's the biggest one is clinical autonomy. I'm not going to be able to practice how I want to practice. I'm not going to be able to use the brackets I want to use. They're going to force me to do this, do that. I'm going to have to change staff. I'm going to have to work longer hours. All of those, everything that you would just from a common sense perspective think if you weren't educated on it. But the beauty of it is, most of these groups are backed by private equity. Private equity are some of the smartest people in the world about creating wealth. And the private equity groups figured out really fast that an angry Dr. Smith, his production does that, and
That's
a
right.
happy Dr. Smith, his production does that. It's actually called the happy doctor concept.
So
So
true.
so how do we grow? How we scale operations, things they don't want to do, back office, accounting, payroll, HR, and we fill in the gaps. A lot of people struggling with staffing nowadays. You get to keep your same staff, but if you have any staffing issues, guess what? We have a whole department to help you with that. You want to bring on an associate? We have a whole department to help you with that. And guess what? You get to make the decision. We just supply you with the candidates. So just any number of things they can do to help. And there are a number of different groups that we don't work with. There are I would say the origin of the DSO, years ago it would, whereas nowadays but traditionally, when a doctor went to sell his practice, he would sell it for around 80% of collections if it was a decent practice. And some of the, the way a lot of DSOs got started is they would offer, say, 100% of collections, but then they would have an exit plan for the doctor in a year or two. And then as more and more competition came along, now we have a model that allows, as long as the doctor has, it's best if they have a 5-year runway or longer. We have a model that can create some generational wealth for them and their families by getting equity, either what we call joint venture equity or holding company equity. And basically, it gives these doctors to leverage their practice as an investment vehicle. And that investment being in a fund that is traditionally been an investment available only to the ultra wealthy, like a private equity fund. So the original DSOs are what we call aggregation or activist groups. That's where you have a proven business plan, a cookie cutter business plan that you come in, you apply over and over, or you build a de novo just like it. And the doctor no longer has an identity. He or she's just an employee. They follow a specific set of rules on every single thing. They use a specific brackets.
Where they think of the corporate structure. This is corporate. Yeah.
Exactly. Versus the newer breed of DSOs, we call the aggregationist DSOs. Those are ones started, some of the people I call friends and they've worked with for years with ICAT and whatnot have done exactly that, have started their own DSOs. It's, say you and I were orthodontists that both graduated from, I don't know, UT Houston or wherever, and our other four schoolmates did too. We've kept in touch. We all have 2 or 3 practices, and all of a sudden we all practice the same. And all of a sudden we decide, you know what, let's scale this. Let's grow this. We're doing good things. We're patient first. We're improving people's lives. Let's scale this. So then we go and get a private equity investment, and then we start adding like-minded doctors to our partnership, and we grow like that. Those are a lot of the groups we work with.
Wow, that's amazing. So what is with the world the way it is right now? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about like how things have shifted a little bit, or have they? Have you seen shifts? Like when people, I mean, it just seems like there's a bigger fervor around it a couple of days ago, a couple of years ago, as opposed to now. It seems like the conversation has cooled down a little bit. Is that what you're seeing too, or is it just kind of like, I don't know, like what do you see?
Yeah, it's not what we're seeing, at least in our firm. We were just named for the fourth year in a row to the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies.
Okay.
We grew 300% the 3 years before that. This last year, we grew about 40%, but you can't keep growing 300 every year, you know.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but since I've been doing this, which is about 2.5 years now, the multiples, everything is the partnerships are based on multiples of EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Mhm.
And the multiples we've seen have actually ticked up a little, surprisingly enough.
Wow.
It depends on the sector. There's general dentistry, there's multi-specialty, there's specialist only, there's DSOs that have a thesis of what we call birth to wisdom teeth. So they only invest in pediatric dentists,
Hmm.
orthodontics, and oral surgeons.
Oh, interesting.
But it hasn't slowed down at all for us. We did right at 100 transitions last year, spanning 164 offices
Wow.
and two dental platforms as well. So
So do
two.
you think that's because there is, I remember being at a lecture, gosh, probably a year ago where Chris Benson, somebody we both know, was talking about lending and
Uh-huh.
talking about how, a orthodontist coming out of school, never had owned a practice before, never worked in a practice before, could still get really favorable bank lending because the banks know it's going to make money. Like people are going to go to the orthodontist, people are going to go to the dentist.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that's why that's still happening?
Yeah, well, yes, that's why private equity is flooding into this space.
Mm.
The default rate on a practice loan for dentists, all specialties, TPs, is 0.7%.
Oh, geez. Okay. So, yeah.
Yes. And so yes, that's why private equity is flooding into this space. And if you know any people who are trying to build their own little mini DSO, if you will, maybe with traditional bank lending, obviously rates are up. Namely, I would say entities between 5 locations and 20 locations are starting to have real hard time growing just because interest rates are so high. And that's when private equity infusions can come in and give them a new way to grow. So it hasn't slowed down at all. At least that's my own myopic perspective. With professional transition strategies, we are busier than we've ever been.
Nice.
Um, but people tend to jump to conclusions. And again, logically, you might think interest rates up, this business must go down.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind, some of that money, that private equity money, was captive money at a lower rate before. And then there's two ways to view rates. I mean, whereas let's say a doctor gets a 7-figure check for a partnership now, he can actually use that to his advantage to supplement his income now. Whereas 2, 3, 4 years ago, he's getting a point and a half on a CD. Now he's getting 5.5%, $1 million put into a CD one, that's a $55,000 supplement to your income.
Yeah.
So two ways to view rates there, but yeah, we're busier than we've ever been.
So you've seen and deal with a lot of various types of DSOs, OSOs, and all that fun stuff. What's the most, because I think one of the challenges is is that fear, of course, of hey, if I partner now, I don't have a say in my own business, and I'm an employee, and all that other stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and so you've seen the spectrum, right? You've seen the spectrum of the companies that, yep, they come in, they rebrand, they do their whole thing, and great. And then they have the ones that are like pull back. What are some of the most unique models that you've seen out there that you I don't know if you to say ask if you like, but just that you've
Mhm.
seen that you're like, oh, that's pretty unique way of doing it. And what's the most unique ones you've seen?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, first thing I would say is to any doctor, if you do decide to go down this path, whether you use me, my company, or just look into it, don't go it alone.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've learned this. I think it's a really smart advice. Keep going. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but yeah, I think it's great.
yeah, yeah. It's equivalent to for being falsely accused of some heinous crime and going to try to defend
Defend
yourself.
yourself.
Or it'd be like me trying to watch a YouTube video and treat a class 2 div 2
Yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah.
It's what we do. I would highly advise representation for any doctor. That being said, that's part of our job. What I do, we analyze all the various structures, and we do what's called a scorecard. If we went all the way down the path of the doctor, we normally return 4, 5, or more offers from individual groups for a doctor to choose from.
Hmm.
Uh,
Wow.
the if a doctor works directly with one DSO and then gets an offer, we call that an unsolicited offer. Um, for and you know, a great DSO, any of them would love to talk to a doctor without representation.
Sure.
But
Right.
as a steward of their capital, it's their job to give that doctor a deal that he's ecstatic with and that they're ecstatic with. It's my job to get the doctor a deal that he's ecstatic with and get them to really put, really lever up through a competitive environment. That being said, there are multiple structures out there. There's a the ones that we work, well, there's 100% buyout. Normally that's like a doctor to doctor sale. But many orthodontists have grown their practice to a level that an individual can't afford it. So they have to do what's called a Mercer acquisition, which can get messy, in which, for instance, they might sell off a quarter of their practice now, then a quarter of their practice
Oh,
in
interesting.
and then a quarter, and they can approach getting close to 100% of annual collections like that. But if they have 5 or more years left, we can partner them with a DSO. Various structures. One is called it's 100% buyout, but they get equity in the holdings company. So imagine the way I said, as an orthodontist, I say, okay, now you own 100% of your one practice. Well, what if you could that's your biggest asset and you don't have it diversified? God forbid something happens, you can't practice tomorrow. The effective value of your practice goes here. Let's
Sure.
diversify that. So let's do that. Let's leverage your practice as an investment vehicle. So imagine instead of owning 100% of your one practice, that you owned 100% or 1% of 100 practices. So those 100 it's 1 + 1 = 3. Those 100 practices with scaled back office are worth exponentially more than 100 individual practices.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one avenue, 100% buyout, but they might get 20, 30, 40% equity in that group as a whole. That private equity group might also have other investments like car washes, or we work with one private equity group that owns a huge chain of sandwich shops across the nation that you see advertised
And
all
so
the
the
time.
doctor will get equity in those too?
Exactly.
Wow,
He gets
interesting.
equity in that. So it's a really unique investment vehicle. It gives them, they could put hundreds of thousands, sometimes 7 figures equity in that group.
Yeah.
And from our comps of doing, over 600 transitions, over 1,000 individual offices and multiple platforms, private equity, holding company equity is on average going to grow about 3x every 3 years or 5x every 5 years. So
Wow.
it greatly outpaces the stock market. The other structure is called a joint venture structure, in which the doctor retains a minority ownership of his practice. So let's say it's a 60-40, and I'm using very low numbers here, but just say it's $1 million practice. They might pay, that you're talking about paying well in excess of collections when you partner with a DSO. So they might pay, let's say, $1 million practice, they might pay 1.5 million.
Mhm.
So 60 times 1.5 is what, 900,000. So they pay 900,000 for that. The doctor owns the rest of his practice, so he's still getting 40% of the profits distributed to him.
Wow.
He's getting his fair doctor wage as well.
Right.
And then when that goes to a recapitalization event, that's when the doctor has a chance to convert a lot of that to holding company equity and take some cash off the table. It's two different kinds of structures. It's practice level equity versus a parent company equity. And you asked me my favorite structure. There are some groups out there now combining the two. So
Oh,
they might buy 60% of your practice with 20% holding company equity and 20% joint venture equity or practice level equity. And I can't say I have a favorite one.
okay.
My favorite one, I guess, on each individual client is the one that gets them, the overall best
Makes them the most
outcome.
happy. Yeah.
If it's a great structure but a poor offer, then the
Sure.
structure doesn't matter. Mhm.
Well, you were mentioning the idea of, work with someone because I mean, I've seen it myself where there's just been so much money left on the table because, of course, everybody's out for their own interest. Having a third party matchmaker, if you will, to be like, hey, I don't think you're seeing this the way that you should be seeing this and looking at the structure the way that you are. What makes a deal go bad?
Um, it comes to mind. We joke, the three Ds, death, divorce, drugs can
Yeah.
kill people.
Can kill a deal? Sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But I would say, expectations not being met, but we do a really good job of explaining expectations, and we have vetted a lot of the groups that we work with. So that's another thing. You don't want to work with, well, you might end up being a great group, but
So
we've
a big
vetted,
risk.
yeah, we vetted all the groups. So the groups that we're bringing to these doctors, we can assign a risk level and go, well, this group is well established, but there's a lower upside. This group is still growing. We believe they're a good group, could be a higher upside. You could get the instance of a pretty big group also with a high upside.
Mm,
And we do a matrix and make comparisons of all that versus if they do nothing and just keep doing what they're doing.
got it. Wow. What do you find is the biggest mistake that people are making when it comes to approaching a DSO? Is it going at it alone? Is it having too high expectations? Is it not being ready? Like what are some things that you see that are some big
I
mistakes?
would say it's definitely going at it alone.
Okay.
And that to me goes hand in hand with not being ready because
Mm,
I would say again, whether it's through us or someone else, you're really not ready if you're going it alone. One of the doctors that we partnered was coming up on a year now. He had gone down that path two different times,
wow.
gone into diligence two different times, and sure enough, they just started peeling back the onion layers. And it wasn't what he thought. Well, we know those onion layers. We know what's going to be peeled back, and it's one of the biggest mistakes. I talk to doctors all the time. Oh, I got a 9x multiple, an 8x multiple. Well, multiples don't matter. What matters is how they valued your practice. You could have, you could have had, and I'm not focusing on any one DSO, but it's, we defend the practice EBITDA, and that's what the practice is valued at. We set it and we defend it. So we know that if they don't adhere to our EBITDA, we ask why and we fight for it. So you need someone fighting for your EBITDA,
Mm,
and sometimes doctors will think they got a great deal when in reality they left seven figures on the table.
wow.
So,
So that brings me to this question about almost a cautionary tale, right? Well, you and I have talked offline about this around. I had a personal client who was not ready to partner, but just thinking, hey, what if? And went to a source of a friend of a friend. I think it was a cousin or something like that. Got an evaluation from them, not in our space, not in the ortho space, not in the dental space, just venture capital in
Mhm.
general, and came back with a very disappointing, frustrating uh, evaluation. And it left a bad taste in the mouth of the owner, almost to be like, well, why even look into this case? So let's talk about who you should be talking to versus who you shouldn't be talking to.
Yeah, if you have a friend of a friend who says they're in private equity or venture capital and, oh, let's look at your practice. Well, at least make sure they specialize in the dental space. In this case, it was just a random, and nothing against them, but just a
Sure.
random investor or investor group that said, "Hey, let's look at this." And from their perspective, I guess looked good up front, but then when they tried to market it, they didn't even know who to start marketing to.
Oh, that's a really good
Um,
too. Not just the evaluation, but who do you market to? Yeah.
exactly. For instance, we have this. We have a proprietary marketing process, and we're putting in AI for matches and all that. It's To give you an idea, we take practices to market. This is after a process, obviously, where we've done the practice valuation and we've estimated what we think it could bring on the open market, partnering with a DSO, which is, by the way, normally really close. And say we start marketing a practice on Wednesday. If it's a highly every Wednesday we market practices. So it's a highly, if it's a, if it's a nice practice, then within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll have 40 inquiries on that practice. I'll narrow it down to 10 or 11 potential buyers or partners, and then narrow it down a little more. And we'll end up having interviews with anywhere from 5 to 10 potential buyers, all that within a month. Um,
Oh,
just just imagine trying to even accomplish that on your own as a private practitioner, calling the groups, and the groups will tell you, they turn down 90% of the doctors that come to them.
mm.
I would say I would say the groups both get excited and roll. I joke with the groups that they get excited and they roll their eyes at the same time when they see us coming. They get excited because they know it's going to be an all-star practice. They roll their eyes because they know they're going to have to pay
Deal
top
with you.
dollar.
Well, here, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this on the show is because I know there's people not in the ortho and dental space listening as well. But, I always talk about getting a professional to do a professional job whenever I'm talking with clients and, oh, who's doing your bookkeeping? Well, there's this little lady who is a good friend of ours who she's really good with numbers and she's done our books for years. Or, I had a client once who their payroll was done by sweet person who's been doing it for all these years but making mistakes here and there and blah blah blah. And I would just say, look, if you're going to do a profession, if you want a professional job to get done, you got to hire a professional to do it. And
Exactly.
I think this is a really great example of an entire industry that there's opportunities out there. There's a ton of opportunities out there, whether you're going to go with the DSO or not, knowing what you want to. My wife and I are looking to buying a couple little businesses right now. And we're talking to people who know how to have that conversation because we don't know how to have all those conversations. And it's not in the dental space, not in the ortho space, but it is something where I'm going, hey, I'm really good at what I do. I'm really
Mhm.
good at my expertise, my profession, whether it be speaking on stages or helping people build cultures. And I'm not going to pretend that all of a sudden I know how to negotiate a multi 7-figure deal, 8-figure deal off of a practice just because I've worked in this industry for a while.
Mhm.
And that's really key, no matter what the industry is, to find that professional to get a professional job done.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And yeah, I'm sure you deal with this all the time. It's called, with practice owners you're dealing with, it's called founder syndrome.
Oh,
And what that is they end up, like they end up treating their business like the family member that, the uncle that, the business has become the uncle that drinks too much at Christmas and everyone just puts up with them. Oh, that's
yeah.
just the way it is. So you probably heard a lot in these businesses. Oh, that's just the way we do things. It's because
Yes.
that's the way Dr. Smith wants to do it. That's just the
Yep.
way. That's called founder's syndrome, and you gotta be wary of that as an entrepreneur. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Get a
When,
professional to do
back in the
stuff.
day when I was doing a lot of real estate, we called it "I lived here" syndrome, which is, of course, my house is worth at least $50,000 more than my neighbors because I lived here.
Uh-huh.
Because I put up this doily curtain in my office, right? Because
Uh-huh.
I've spent so many Christmases here. It's like, no, the numbers are the numbers, right? Let's look at. I know we've got the blinders on and all that stuff, but yeah, it's interesting what we do, and we all do this, right? We're all so close to. That's why, well, even when what I do, I say, you need somebody who can read the label from outside the jar that you're standing in.
Exactly. And
You're that reader of the label.
yeah, and I would also say, I would caution people that have, there are DSOs are like dentists and orthodontists. There are good ones and bad ones. I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
they're just are. And I would caution people that have never really done the research that because most of the squawking you hear, it's negative, right? Because someone could have a bad experience with a DSO. And
Yeah.
what are they going to do? They're going to tell everyone, don't do it, don't ever do it. And they just assume that all of them are bad. Well, guess what? If you have a really good experience with a DSO, you get, I call it the lottery check. You get a lottery check, and then you get another one when there's a group recapitalization. What are you going to do? Are you going to be screaming from the trees, hey, I got rich? You're not going to be doing that. You're a
True.
private orthodontist. You're not
That's
going to be
true.
out. So the ones that do really well, it's the meek shall inherit the earth, right?
Yeah, it's
So,
true.
so just think about that. Just the people that are, and a lot of them have had bad experiences, but I know a lot that have had great experience.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ty, I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us because whether they're people listening are in the ortho space or not, the idea is again, let's find professionals who are professional. I love the evolution of your entrepreneurial journey as it is, no matter what. Like you said, we're all in sales. It's just another piece of the sales process, just in bigger numbers. But being able to really look at your business, am I looking at it correctly? Am I looking at it from all the angles? Am I getting the best possible deal out of it that I possibly can? I think that's important to really think about. So thank you for sharing that information with us.
Yeah, and one of my, a few of my, fonder memories so far in the business involve clients that didn't even do a transaction. I
Oh,
was
nice.
I was able to really help them. Hey, we found one that they were under $1,500 market in their area for a case start.
Wow.
Um, they also had some very easily solvable insurance issues. Rip this Band-Aid off and start charging what everyone else is. And we have an 18-month plan. And they were so thankful. They called
Sure.
back a month and a half later, couldn't be happier. So some of the most meaningful wins for me is the free advice. I just like to help people.
It's interesting you say that because it's came up a couple of times today about being a resource to people as opposed to selling them something.
Mhm.
And there's so much value in this. I think in our market today and the world today, the more we can be a resource to people, and I really look at myself as you had mentioned sometimes the best advice is the free advice. I
Mhm.
love giving advice to people. I sat on a call this morning with a potential speaker and just was having a great conversation, giving her all these ideas and things they probably not going to hire me to do anything. That's okay. I want her to know that I'm a resource to them. And
Exactly.
that's where you can add so much value to the world. How can people reach out to you, by the way? We haven't talked about that.
Yeah, so they can reach out to me on my cell phone or email if you want me to give it. Be
Sure,
happy.
go for it. Yeah.
Cell phone is it's Ty Ramsey, Ty and then Ramsey. So my cell is 469-360-1031, or via email, it's just Ty, at professionaltransition.com.
Professionaltransition.com. Awesome.
And also LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
I publish a lot of articles and stuff on LinkedIn about the space. So
Oh,
that's
very cool. Nice. So again, being a resource for that. Well, Ty, we end every episode with 4 questions that I ask everyone, and they're kind of rapid fire, just off the top of your head. Are you willing to play?
I'm willing.
All right. So, what is the highest and greatest responsibility that you believe you have on this earth?
Um, Great question. For me, it's just to be the spiritual leader of my household and my
Love it.
family.
That's so cool. What do you want as the ultimate outcome for your life?
Um, I want to, if I died tomorrow, I feel like I want people, I want to have made a mark. I want to have improved the world in numerous ways. I want to have improved many people's lives in numerous ways. I just want to have improved things.
Love it. Love that. What do you consider true leadership to be?
Good question. True leadership is someone that um, empowers their team, knocks down hurdles instead of puts up hurdles.
Mm,
Um, Someone that is part of the team instead of over the team. The team doesn't care for the team just on a work level, but also a personal level. A true leader is family to their team.
yeah. Love that. Okay, last question. It goes along with a little bit what you said just a moment ago, but the fact is, every single one of us will have a final day on this planet. Hopefully, it's years and years and years from now. But what experience do you hope or want to have between now and dead?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. Between now and dead. Okay. Um, Gosh, what do I want to do? Well, just a purely selfish one. I have a part-time hobby of poker. I'd like to win the World Series of Poker. That'd
Oh,
be, but and would like to go into space maybe at some point.
wow, that's cool. Those are cool experiences to have. That's
Yeah.
neat. Love it. Well, Ty, as always, it's such a joy to talk to you and a pleasure and just a wealth of knowledge. And thank you for edifying the audience and edifying myself and giving us your time today. I really appreciate it.
You as well, and I just want to give a quick shout out to you. I've looked at a few practices that you work with, and I can tell it's a Dino practice
Oh,
anytime because you're doing some outstanding work out there. So to everyone considering a consultant, highly recommending them.
wow. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Ty. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, again, thank you for tuning in for this episode of Own Your Role. And remember, as always, get a professional, do a professional job. And one of the goals here is always to find unique entrepreneurs to tell you the best practices in your business. And I hope that whether you're in this industry or not, the orthodontic industry or dental industry, that you were able to find some nuggets and what we call in our industry pearls that you can take away for your own business. And as you evaluate it, as you're looking at what you want to do, because the fact of the matter is, everyone is in a state of position. Every business, the goal is to ultimately sell it for a profit. That's why you got into business. And so Ty gave us some great tips and ideas here. So thank you everybody for being here. We'll see you on the next episode of the Own Your Role podcast.